Hi everybody, this is Doug at Omniversal Yoga. I have a cool concept for you today in terms of sequencing, a way to think about sequencing yoga postures that uses contract relaxed stretching or post-isometric relaxation stretching. And I have a whole course, a mini course for free on my website, omniversalyoga.com. So feel free to check that out and to understand the science of PIR and how that works. And today I'm going to show you a couple examples of how to use this concept in yoga sequencing. So the first thing we have is flexion and extension. So here's a video. So basically I'm going to go into a standing posture where I'm really actively flexing the hip. And so all the hip flexors are engaged, but especially the rectus femoris. So here I am coming into the posture. So with the hip flexion, so my hip is flexed at 90 degrees or so, and then I'm also bringing my knee into full extension or near. I never totally lock out my joints doing yoga. I'm a hypermobile person, and my whole goal in my yoga practice is to build balance strength around the joints. And since I can hyperextend my joints, I always leave a little bit of room where I'm not completely locked out. So you can see that I'm not totally in extension here. Same thing with my leg down here. There's a little bit of engagement. I'm not completely locking out my knee. So what else is happening here is I'm near full knee extension and with full hip flexion here. So that means my rectus femoris muscle is super short. And that is this muscle right here. So this muscle is a hip flexor, knee extensor, crosses the knee joint. It's a very strong flexor of the hip. And this is the trigger point referral information. So the high trigger point area here in the muscle will cause deep central knee pain. So if you're doing this posture and you feel deep central knee pain, well, you're really bunching up these fibers. If you have trigger point fibers in that muscle, they're going to get bothered and you're going to start getting pain from those fibers being bunched up. So this actually is a way to treat that because we're intentionally shortening that muscle as well as the other hip flexors, including, let's see here, iliopsoas, especially the iliacus portion of the muscle here because that's the one joint muscle, attaches the hip to the femur, and that can cause low back pain in a vertical pattern, but mostly it'll cause this anterior hip pain, and also the TFL muscle. That's another muscle that is going short here. It's also a abductor of the hip, but it is also a flexor, and it is getting bunched up. So, and that can cause trochanter bursitis type pain, like a deep pain in the trochanter or coming down on the side of the leg. So this is really working these muscles. They're active. And now in the next part of this, I'm actually going to really be using my rectus femoris as I keep my leg straightened out and stop supporting it with my arm. So now the hip flexors are really bunched up, short, and now they're going to be working really hard. So, and here I can't hold this for very long because I actually start to feel a cramping in the front of the hip. So that cramping in the front of the hip, that could be the iliacus muscle, most likely. If I was feeling some deep knee pain, that would be more of the rectus femoris muscle. So this is a way to think about treating your own aches and pains in a yoga asana by understanding where the problems are based on what you feel and then what muscles are lengthening and shortening. So now I'm going to come into a counter pose, and this counter pose is now going to stretch all those hip flexors that I had just shortened. So here I am coming into, that's a warrior one. Now what, let me rewind this up, rewind. So I'm coming into warrior one type of position, a lunge, but what I'm feeling is, well, I'm getting some hip extension here as my leg is going back this way, but with my foot dorsiflex this much, I actually start to get anterior ankle pain. So that's kind of a cramping from the tibialis anterior going short. So that's my limitation in this posture, is actually here. It's not here. So for me to actually get a better hip stretch, hip flexor stretch, I'm going to come into I'm going to come into another pose. So I'm going to come into a low lunge. Now I'm coming to the low lunge, and now I take the ankle joint out of it. Ankle joint's taken out of the situation. Now I can get a nice big stretch for my hip flexors. So that's a good general stretch for the hip flexors. Now my next move is going to be a stretch specifically for the rectus femoris muscle. And here it is. So now I'm adding in that knee flexion. So the knee flexion with the hip extension, that's really going to lengthen that rectus femoris muscle. So that is a really great combo pose and counter pose, or series of counter poses, depending on what muscles, what hip flexors you want to target into the stretch. I'll give you one more example today, and now this one is another related standing posture. So now I'm using those hip flexors again, but now I'm abducting the leg. So by doing that and holding this pose, the hip flexors are shortening, and the TFL muscle especially is shortening, because not only am I in hip flexion, but I'm also in horizontal abduction. So the TFL muscle, this one, is really going to be going short. And then also the glutes. So the glutes, glute minimus and medius, are also going into a shortened position here and having to work to actively keep the leg up. And now my arm is helping, but these muscles are definitely engaged in this shortening as well. So this is the glute minimus referral, and you can see it can cause a posterior sciatic type pain, radiating pain down the back of the leg, or radiating pain down the side of the leg. And the glute medius muscle also going short. That will bunch up if there's trigger points in those muscles. In that muscle, it's going to bunching them up together like that, especially actively having them engage, will tend to bring out its problems. Now that's one of the kind of the therapeutic benefits of yoga postures in terms of the physical practice, is that you are really taking muscles into extreme ranges and asking them to do work in those extreme ranges. So that will actually tend to flush out problems, and it's also a way of treating those fibers. If you shorten them and hold that contraction and then go into a lengthening posture. So that's what I'm doing intentionally here. Some of that intentional shortening and then intentional lengthening is built into some sequences of yoga, like Sun Series, Sun Salutation A and B does that, and there's other examples of that in Ashtanga and in other vinyasa type yoga. But what I'm doing is taking that idea and understanding that concept of post-isometric relaxation that's involved that will make the yoga combinations more therapeutic, and taking that idea and just putting it back to back. Intentional shortening, intentional lengthening, basically doing contract, relax, stretching in the yoga asanas. So here's glute medius. Glute medius is going short here. Some people will get SI joint pain or sacral pain here, or low back pain. That is also possible. And now here's the counter pose. So the counter pose is going to be Revolved Triangle. So all those hip muscles, TFL, glute minimus, glute medius, that were just really working and shortening, now they're going into a big stretch. And what I generally feel when I'm doing the Revolved Triangle is actually I feel lower leg pain, kind of like from here to the ankle, even though my ankle is really it's not in an extreme position. It's pretty neutral, and it doesn't even have to stabilize that much because my hand is actually on the ground too. So what that is, that's glute minimus referral. That's glute minimus referral. A lot of times when you feel referral pain from a muscle, you don't feel the whole pattern, you only feel part of it. And feeling just the lower leg part of the glute minimus referral pattern, that's very common. And that's exactly what I feel when I do this pose. So this is a really good combination for me. Contract, relax, stretching for my glutes, especially glute minimus. Okay, that is what I have for you today, and I hope that helps you in terms of sequencing, gives you an idea to work with in terms of sequencing, intentionally shortening, and then directly after that in a counter pose, directly lengthening those muscles that were shortened. And when you learn the trigger point referrals, you can actually figure out where the discomfort or pain is coming from, or the movement limitation, and do a counter pose that will address that issue on the spot. And then you can come into the pose again after that, and you will see you will have increased your range of motion and decreased any discomfort in the posture. So if you want to learn more about that, check out omniversalyoga.com. I have a free mini course. It's about 18 minutes, 2 videos explaining the science of the PIR stretching, post-isometric relaxation, and also giving a few more examples of how to apply that in your yoga practice. All right, thanks for joining me.